Okay, guys, here we are with lesson 31 problem set. Sorry, my screen's shaky till I get sitting down here. Keep in mind that this is not what you are going to turn into me. This is what you can use to look at as you're doing your homework set. And the examples are going to be the same. They're just going to have different numbers. So you can't turn this into me and say, I did this instead of my homework, because that's not going to work. This is done for you for an example, and I am expecting you to still do the homework. All right. So just like we were doing in our lesson, the directions tell me that I have to estimate and then divide. Sophie, sorry, my dog's hungry. An example has been done for you. So remember, estimation is not wrong or right either way. The two things that you want to make sure of is that you have rounded to a multiple of 10, which means that if we're talking about a bigger number like a 2-digit or 3-digit number, or even 4-digit number, you really want that final digit to be a 0. So you want to round to the nearest 10. When you do that, you're going to give yourself a nice number to work with. You also want to look at the first 2 digits in the number and use that with your multiplication chart to figure out what you should round to. So for example, if I'm looking at a denominator of 7, then I'm going to pull out my multiplication chart and I'm going to look down at the row of 7s. And I'm looking at my numerator of 78. So I want to see, what should I round 78 to? Okay, which multiple of 7? So you've got the example here done for you. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at letter A. Step 1, put this as a fraction. 53.2 over 4/10. They are not two separate fractions. You are creating one fraction with both decimals. Because I am working with a denominator of 4/10, then that means I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 10. When I multiply the numerator and the denominator by 10, that really means that I'm kind of moving this one place. Okay? I move my decimal one place. And when I get that, or when I do that, I get 532 over 4. Now, the estimating here isn't really, so 4, and I'm going to kind of look at this as 500. I know 4 goes into 400 100 times. So I know that my answer is going to be over 100. So I'm not even going to, I'm just going to kind of, because the next multiple would be 8, and 800 is way too big. So I'm going to stick with 400. If you notice, what I did was, instead of saying, oh, 4 goes into 5 one time, I've got to kind of look at that whole number overall as 500. And so 4 would go into 500 about 100 times. So I know it's going to be over 100. If I wanted to, I could be more specific, and I could then look at the 30 and I could kind of try to estimate. But I for right now, I think being close to 100 is a pretty good estimation. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to come back to my original problem and I'm going to work that out. All right. If I had 5 blocks, I could make one group of 4. I would use 4 of those blocks. I would have 1 left over, so I would trade that hundreds mat for tens. And I already have 3 tens, so that would give me a total of 13 tens. How many groups of 4 could I make out of 13? Well, I can pull out my multiplication chart and look down the 4s at how close I can get to 13 without going over, or I could draw 13 dots and circle my groups of 4. When I do that, I figure out that I would get 3 groups. And 3 times 4 is 12. I would subtract. I'd end up with 110. Since I couldn't use that, I would trade it for 1s and use the 1s I already have. So now I would have 12 1s. And I just figured out that 4 goes into 12 3 times. So I can do that with no remainder left over. Okay, so my answer, this has the estimation here. So my estimate was going to be close to 100. And my actual quotient is 133. Okay. I'm going to circle that because I want you to see, and you should want me to see what your actual answer is. All right, so let's move on to B. 1 52 hundredths, ooh, I hear the word hundredths, divided by 8 tenths. So this is one of those tricky ones where I've got hundredths and tenths. So I'm going to label this A, and I'm going to label this B. And I'm going to put 1 52 hundredths over 8 tenths. So I have to look at my denominator to figure out what I'm going to multiply by. And since it's 8 tenths, that means I'm going to multiply both the bottom and the top by 10. When I do that, that means I'm going to move that decimal 1 place. So now I'm going to have 15.2 over 8. Now, I can go ahead and estimate here. I know that 8 goes into 16 2 times. And this is a little bit less than a little bit less than 16. So I know my answer is going to be close to 2. All right. And just by noticing that I have a whole number on the bottom and a decimal on the top, my quotient is going to have that decimal in it. So now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to set it up like a regular long division problem. Now, if you remember, I told you in the when I was doing the lesson that we just pretend like that decimal's not there right now. Or if you really want to, you can go ahead and move it on up. And that's it. That's all that decimal does. Okay? I shouldn't see it anywhere else in these steps. It just goes from here to here. And so if I have one block, I can't make a group of 8. So I'd trade in that hundreds block and get some tens, and then I would have 15 tens. And I can take and make one group of 8. And when I do that, that means I use 8 blocks, and I would have 7 tens left over. I would trade those in for some ones, and I already had 2 ones, so now I have 72 ones. 8 goes into 72 9 times. My 9 goes above the 2. I've got a little bit of a space there, I'm sorry. But my 9 goes above the 2 because I'm talking about ones. 9 times 8 is 72, and I have no remainder. My estimate was 2. My answer is 1.9. So I'm going to say that's a pretty daggone good estimate. And I'm going to put my check mark there. If I want to check my work, I can always take the quotient times the divisor. 8 times 9 is 72. 8, 15, 1 place behind the decimal. So 1 place behind the decimal, and that is my check. All right, so number 2 is more of the same. If you notice, they've done another example for you. And the first thing that I notice is that up here we multiplied everything by 10. In the example, I'm multiplying by 100. So that tells me that for A and B, I am most likely going to be multiplying by 100. So, step 1, A over B. Okay? That is step 1, to set that up as a fraction. So now I'm working in tenths, hundredths. So that example told me that these two are going to be multiplied by hundredths. When I do that, I move my decimal 1, 2, and I get 942. 1, 2, and I get 3. Now, I know this is close to 900. It's not closer to 1,000 because it's less than 950. So I'm going to say 900. 3 goes into 9 3 times, and so 3 would go into 900 300 times. So my estimate is going to be 300. So now I'm going to do the math to find out. 3 goes into 942. If I have 9 blocks and I want to make groups of 3, I can actually do that with my first number. And I would use all of the hundreds blocks. So then I would look at my tens. I have 4 tens, excuse me, and if I want to make a group of 3, I could make one group of 3, and I would use 3 blocks. Then I would be left with 1 10, so I'd trade that in for ones and add it to my 2 ones, and I would have 12 ones. 3 goes into 12 4 times. I have no remainder, and so my quotient is 314. My estimation was 300, so when I'm talking about the hundreds and I'm only off by 14, that's a very good estimate. Okay. So, letter B. I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to estimate by just taking out the decimal. Okay? This is how I'm going to estimate. I'm just going to take out those decimals. And I'm going to say that 96, that's a really ugly number, but that is really close to 100. So we're just going to call this 100. And 3,900, well, we're just going to go ahead and guess what we're going to call that. We're going to call that 4,000. Divided by, 100. So my guess, my estimation is that my answer is going to be close to 40. Okay, so now the game begins. Let's see how close I am. All right, so step 1, set this up. I'm so sorry, as a fraction. I'm dealing with the tenths, hundredths again. Multiply the top and bottom by 100. That gets rid of that decimal altogether because I've moved it 2 times. And so now I've got to do the math. Ugh, that is some ugly math. All right, so I know 96 is not going to be able to be made out of a group of 3. I can't even use 39 to make a group of 96. So now I've got 393. And while my multiplication chart does not have 96 on it, I am going to just start adding 96 and see how close I can get to 393 without going over. So there I have 192. 9 plus 9 is 18. 288. What do you think? You think I can get one more? Let's see. 14. Oh, look at that. I can. So I've used 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 96. And when I made those 4 groups of 96, I used 384 blocks. I keep saying blocks because if you remember back in the very first unit when we did this, that's exactly what we were doing. We were trading those blocks in. So I have 96 blocks left over, and of course I can make one beautiful group of 96 and I am complete. I have no remainder. My estimation was 40. My quotient is 41. I think that checks out very nicely. I can multiply my divisor by my dividend, my quotient by my divisor and make sure that I get my dividend. Okay, but I'm going to save some time because my battery is running low. So number 3, solve using the standard algorithm. Use the thought bubble to show your thinking as you rename the divisor as a whole. So this shows you exactly what I have been doing. Okay, just kind of moving that decimal. So my answer here, and I do believe they want me to go ahead and work this out to fill in the complete example here. It doesn't say the first example is done for you, so that tells me, whoops, that I'm going to have a little bit of work to do. So I noticed the first thing they did was set it up as a decimal. I noticed they multiplied by 10. They don't have that there because now we're kind of getting to some mental math and they've just moved the decimal. And so my answer should be 154. But they want us to do the math. So 3 goes into 4 one time. Bring down my 6. 3 is going to go into 16. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. That's 5 times. I don't want to go over my number there. And then I have my 12. And 3 goes into 12, 54. That's what they have here, so I know that my answer is correct. Now this time they take the training wheels off for me. Okay, and they want me to take this as step number 1. Oh, 3.16 is pi. And they want me to recognize that I'm going to move the decimal 2 times on the bottom, 2 times on the top. That's going to give me 316 over 4. So I'm not going to solve it right here. Oh, I better come back up here and put my answer, or my quotient. I'm not going to solve it right here. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the math. Let's take a look and estimate. 4 would go into 300. The closest that I can think is 8 times. It would go in, it would be 320. So I'm going to go ahead and use that as my estimate. So my answer should be close to 80. So let's check. 4 goes into 31. Well, if I said 8 times, that would be 32. So that's too much. So I'm going to use 7. I can make 7 groups. And when I do, I'm left with 3. I bring down my 6. 4 goes into 36 9 times. And my quotient is 79. My estimate was 80, so I am very close. All right, now, step 1, set up the division sentence as a fraction. I'm not going to do the times, but I'm going to recognize I need to move that decimal 1 time on the bottom. That means I can only move it 1 time on the top. So that's going to give me 23.1 divided by 3. Got my point in there, my decimal. 3 goes into 23. It goes into 7 times 21. 8 times 24. So let's say it's going to be approximately 8. This is my thought bubble. I love this. All right, so now I'm going to do the math. 3 into 23 and 1/10. Can't make it out of 2. So 3 into 23 is 7. 7 times 3 is 21. Oh, 3 take away 1 is 2. I bring down my 1. 3 goes into 21 7 times. Now, my answer here is 77. I've forgotten to do something. My estimate was 8. Oh, there it is. I forgot to bring my decimal up. That's why it's important to estimate so you can recognize that when you get 77 that could not be correct. Step 1, rewrite this as a fraction. I recognize on the bottom that I'm in the hundredths. I'm going to have to move my decimal 2 times. So I come up to the top and I move it 2 times. But, uh-oh, I'm going to have to add something here. There's something missing. So I'm going to add in a 0 right there. All right, when I do that, now I have 1,560 divided by 24. That changes things a lot. 24 is really close to 25, and because when I talk about 25, I like to think about money. I'm going to think about 25 going into like $15. How many times would 25 go into that? So 25, 50, 75, 100. So there's 4. 25, 125, 150. So that's going to go about 6 times. And since I'm talking about 1,500, it's going to be close to 60 should be my quotient. So let's check and see now. 24 goes into 1,560. I just decided that was 6 times. 4, 2, 12, 13, 14. I'm going to subtract 2, 1. Now, even though I have 2 digits here, all that means is that I've used thousands, I've used my hundreds blocks, I've used my tens blocks. I still have to use these ones blocks. I still have to break them down, okay, because I don't have enough tens to make a group of 24, so I can't forget about my 0. So now 24 goes into 120. I'm not sure, so I'm going to start adding. 72, 96. I'm trying to get close to 120. Oh, and looky there. I get it perfectly. 120. So I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was able to make 5 groups of 24, and I used all my blocks. So my estimate was 60. My quotient was actually 65. So that is a good estimate. All right, let's look down here at these word problems, your favorite. So if I notice I've got a 4, I've got an A, and I've got a B. That means I'm going to use this information to help me with both of these. If volunteers set up a water station every 7/10 of a mile, including one at the finish line, how many stations will they have? Why on earth would they put including one at the finish line? That makes no sense to me. It says the total here is 18 9/10, and they're going to set them up every 7/10 of a mile. Or every 7/10 of a kilometer. Look at me, I'm talking in using the wrong system here. All right, so in my head, I'm going to move it. I'm going to multiply by 10. 7 is going to go into 18. My estimate is that my answer is going to be about 20. And so I'm going to check and see now, because 7 goes into 14 2 times, and that's really close to a 0. So I'm going to say, I'm going to round that kind of to 140. My other option would be 210. So I'm just going to stick with 140 there for that one. It's going to be close to 20, but I know it's going to be over because I'm underestimating. Or I'm using I guess I could say I'm using a lower number here. Now I'm going to do the actual math. 7 goes into 18 2 times. 7 goes into 49 7 times. I subtract. So how many stations are they going to have altogether? They're going to have 27 water stations. And I'm going to circle that. Now, if volunteers set up a first aid station every 9/10 of a kilometer, including one at the finish line, that is so not important. So I'm going to cross that out because that might just throw me off. How many stations will they have? Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing. 18 9/10 divided by 9/10. Move that one time, and I'm going to have 189 divided by 9. My estimation, 9 goes into 18 2 times. So again, I'm going to guess that they're going to have a first aid station about, or they're going to have about 20 first aid stations. Now I'm going to do the actual math. 9 goes into 189. 18, subtract, bring down my 9. Oh. So they're going to have 21 first aid stations. I'm going to circle that answer so that way Miss Pipkin knows that that's my answer. And then finally, I'm at my last one, number 5. Hopefully my battery hangs out here. In a laboratory, a technician combines a salt solution contained in 27 test tubes. Each test tube, so one test tube, contains 0.06 liters of the solution. If he divides the total amount into test tubes that hold 0.3 of a liter each, how many test tubes will he need? Okay, so I'm going to start with this first bit of information that he's going to give me, okay? Or that they're going to give me, and that's that I have 27 test tube, and that those test tube contains 0.06 or 0.06 of the solution. So let's find out how much exactly I'm talking about here. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4, that's 16. Now, I don't have to do the zeros, but what I do have to do is make sure that my answer has 2 places after the decimal. So, what I'm finding out is that each test tube is going to contain 1 62/100. So now, that's the total amount of solution. I'm sorry, that's the total amount of solution that I have all together. So now I'm going to take that 1 62/100, and instead of using these test tubes, you know what? He decided that he needs some smaller test tubes. Whoops. So he goes to Walmart and he buys some smaller test tubes. And now these each hold 0.3. Now, I know I'm going to move my decimal 1 place. So that's going to give me about, divided by 3. 11 62/100 is really close to 12, so I'm going to guess my answer is going to be close to 4. But I'm going to, oh, you know what, friends? I put an extra 1 on there. I am so sorry. That was 1 62/100 if I look at my answer. Something just wasn't feeling right, because when I thought 3 going into 1, that didn't seem right. So I went back and I looked at my math, and I did the math right here, but then I rewrote it wrong over here. Wow, how many times has that happened to you? So instead of it being 11 62/100, it's actually 16 2/100, which means my answer should be close to 5. So let's see. 3 goes in. I'm just going to put my decimal up here first this time. I'm going to subtract. 3 goes into 12 4 times. My quotient is, I don't think you can buy 5 4/10 of a test tube. I've never been to a store where that can happen. So I've got to think about what the question's asking me. If I buy 5 test tubes, I'm not going to have enough. So he's going to need to buy 6 test tubes. All right, friends. That is all of the problem set. Remember to use this to guide you as you are doing the 31 homework. If you get stuck on a homework problem, you can rewind, fast forward, pause on the problem set to help you solve. Thank you so much. You guys, good luck. I can't wait to celebrate you.